France had been the first country to make the jump to smokeless gunpowder, but their new Lebel rifle wasn't really fit for carbine length. It had been rushed into service and had a number of problems. They needed to arm the cavalry, artillery, and other non-frontline troops with handier weapons. These units still lagged behind with single-shot black powder Gras carbines and musketoons. A solution would be found, but would leave France with two types of shoulder arms. Further troubles with the Lebel would see the new carbine design take over more and more roles on the battlefield, and World War I would thrust it right into the front line. Hi, I'm Othais, and today we're going to cover several variations of the Berthier as used in World War I. Now, before we get started, I want to say that's not generally how we're going to do things. We want this show to feature one variant of one gun at a time, as long as there is a reasonable distinction between the models. And there are reasonable distinctions between these models. But we've got our partnership with the Great War, and we got to play catch up so that we can get on into Germany and things like that. So you guys are going to get a couple at once. I hope that's okay. They all use the same action, and we'll get into detail about that, so I think it'll work out fine. We also are going to cut off at the end of World War I. There's a lot to say about these guns after World War I, and we will get to that. Just wait. Now, with all that in mind, this is the French Berthier. Now, when we talk about these guns, we first have to talk about the Lebel, which we just did on the last episode. The thing about the Lebel is it was rushed into service. We covered that. The number one problem is slow loading, and the number two problem is really limited capacity if you're trying to make a carbine. Trying to get a tube loader down to short enough for cavalry, no good. Over in Austria and Germany, they had adopted the straight pull 1886 rifle, which fed from a one-directional clip. That means 5 rounds could be inserted in the action in the same amount of time it would normally take to insert 1 round. This is revolutionary. Now, the Germans copy this design and improve it so that it's bi-directional. You could load it either way. There's no top or bottom. And they include it on their 1888 commission rifle. So France's neighbors are caught up on smokeless gunpowder, and they have faster clip-loading systems, and France still needs a carbine. So in steps a railroad engineer by the name of Monsieur Berthier. And I think I know his first name, but there's 2 Berthiers, and every time I look it up, even in French sources, I get a different answer. So if somebody's dead sure, go ahead and start an argument in the comments. For now, this is the first Monsieur Berthier, the one who has to do with this carbine. Later, we'll probably talk about another Monsieur Berthier who did work on semi-automatic prototypes. Anyway, Monsieur Berthier steps in, and he has an idea for a conversion system for the Lebel rifle. He takes Lebels and he fits them with originally these Austrian-style single-directional clips. Then, as Germany comes out with its 1888, he makes the same adjustments for 2-directional. We're not sure who came up with what, but regardless, it was 1-directional, it becomes 2-directional. It was originally meant to be available to convert existing Lebels. That idea gets dropped. The gun gets simpler and simpler. Originally, it was going to have 5-shot capacity. It gets all the way down to 3 while trying to make room for things and getting everything lined up and working properly. So what ultimately goes to trial is this 3-shot lightweight Berthier carbine. And it wins. It's adopted in 1890, and we will see, it's not quite this model, but we will see ultimately something like this. Now for the French, that 3-shot capacity really isn't that big of a deal because previously they had loaded 1 cartridge at a time. They're going from 1 to 3. That's triple down on their money. Granted, other countries are already looking at 5, but, it's early days and everybody's still experimenting. So we've just loaded 3 as fast as we used to load 1. We're happy. That's going to change, obviously, but we'll get there in a moment. Now, we'll see 3 variants of the 1890 come about. This will be the cavalry, which that use is obvious. The cuirassiers, which that's a special French unit. It's sort of like a heavy cavalry, dreadnought, I don't know what to call it. These are guys that wear breastplates and carry rifles at the same time. It's confusing, and They're obviously not that effective by the time we get to World War I, but they had to have a specially designed stock so that they could fit the gun up against their dumb armor. Then you have the military police, the gendarmerie. These guys adopt a gun of their own with a special bayonet. Now in 1892, we're going to see that same rifle taken over and renamed Mousqueton, which is another French tradition. Has more to do with tradition than it does with design. It just is another version of a short rifle. We'll get into that in more detail when we get around to the Gras. The 1892 is intended for artillerymen and other specialty troops, and it really becomes sort of the most recognized model because it's handed out to anybody. Now, the 1892 does well, and the Lebel continues to serve until about 1902, when the French are having trouble with arming the Indo-Chinese peoples in their holdings in Asia. These people are short-statured and can't handle this unwieldy, tube-fed, awful rifle. So they take the Berthier and just sort of give it a longer barrel. This gun is so successful that they decide, hey, we might as well make these for other troops, most notably in Africa. They go ahead and make it even longer still, bringing it up to the same length as a Lebel, but it's still lighter and easier to carry, and it has that limited 3-shot capacity, but hey, faster loading. And as a bonus, it's easier to manufacture. So this becomes the 1907 Senegalese rifle. The 1902 and 1907 serve well in their roles until, well, World War I happens and everybody's caught off guard. The French, they haven't been producing the Lebel as much or at all for a number of years, so they're rushing to retool production. In the meantime, though, they still roll out Berthiers from time to time in batches, so the machines are ready to go. Well, what do? They reach back for that 07 and make a few modifications. Most importantly, they take the dedicated specific bayonet for the 07 and they swap it over to the standard Lebel Rosalie. Now, for the carbine side of things, you're going to see mostly this 1892 bayonet, just so you know. Now, the 07-15 does well. It's just a simplified 07 with familiar parts from the Lebel. It's still only 3-shot. The carbines are retained. All the 90s, the 92, they all serve. So you're basically looking at the Lebel plus these two guns for most of the war. But there's a problem. The Germans are fielding 5-shot rifles and carbines. The Kar 98 specifically is proving to be a bit of a bother. You see, the Germans have started to understand shock troop usage. These are guys that have appropriate grenades, pistols, and reasonable capacity rifles that break into trench lines and hold the positions. So if you're French and you have a static position and loading 3 is as good as loading 1, it doesn't seem like such a bad idea to have a 3-shot gun. But by the time you're told to run across a screaming battlefield, drop in a trench, and nail as many guys as you can, hopefully not getting your head caved in, you don't want to have to reload once. So you'd take a 30-round magazine if you could. Well, it's time to go ahead and bump that Berthier up. So in 1916, they go back to sort of the original drawings in a way, because there are diagrams of 5-shot Berthiers from way back before it was in trials. Now, the solution is a little bit more modern. It's nice pressed steel bottom, and they went ahead and fixed a couple other problems. That Mannlicher feeding system has an open bottom and lets mud into the action. We'll get into why in a moment. Well, they went ahead and put a cover. It's just a little spring-loaded thing that snaps open and snaps closed. This helps keep the rifle clean of muck. They also added a hand guard because if you're running and shooting, this thing gets hot and you still need to be able to move it. The 5-round magazine system really isn't all that different from the 3-round magazine system. So there's what we had before, and here's what we have now. You get 2 extra rounds. Operationally, it's the same thing all over again. Like I said, the only big difference is that cover at the bottom. At this point in 1916, by design, France has caught up. Unfortunately, these guns don't roll out right away. They go ahead and switch over to marking the receivers to Model 16, but these parts aren't quite ready yet, and there's a surplus of the 3-shot still waiting around to be assembled. So you find, just like our example here, honestly, you find a lot of 1916 marked receivers that still have 3-shot, no handguard configuration. These are sort of transitional models. So it's hard to say how many of these really made it to the front line in 5-shot configuration. Several thousand at least, though. Maybe up to 80,000. It's kind of, the numbers are here and there, and they weren't really tracked until a couple years after the war, so we're not 100% certain. We do know, however, that there was a 5-shot rifle that was also introduced as part of the 1916 program, but assembly started so late that no more than 400 were delivered by the end of the war. So yes, you will see plenty of 5-shot rifles out there because they were converted post-war. In World War I, though, you're really only looking at a 3-shot Berthier rifle or the Lebel. Now, let's go ahead and take a look inside the Berthier to see just how it works. We'll go ahead and work with the 5-shot magazine system since it is slightly more complicated with the addition of an extra spring and cover. It loads from an end block with all the cartridges and clip entering and remaining in the gun. As we bolt forward, we will pick up the first cartridge and press it into the chamber. Turning the bolt drops the 2 symmetrical locking lugs into mortises in the receiver, locking the action. A pull of the trigger draws the sear downward, releasing the cocking piece and freeing it to spring forward, projecting the firing pin into the cartridge's primer, discharging the round. Lifting the bolt unlocks the action. As we draw it back, the extractor pulls the spent casing into the ejector, flicking it away. And so the process begins again. This time, notice that the cocking piece is reset when the bolt is lifted. We'll spend more time and better detail on these features specifically in the future, but for now, just know that this rifle is cock on open. The follower is continuously pressing up into the last cartridge, and the clip is holding all the ammo together. But the follower doesn't directly contact the clip. This means when we chamber the last round, the follower is free to rise between the lips of the clip, and it falls to the bottom of the action. On earlier models, this would just drop to the ground. Here, the cover that protects the magazine from the mud of the trenches has caught it. Feeding the next clip will force it open, just in case the shooter forgets. To unload the rifle, press the release inside the trigger guard and depress the clip slightly. This will eject it from the top of the action. The French did not provide a safety as, just like with the Lebel, the gun was expected to be carried with an empty chamber. Now that we know how they work, let's have Mae show us how they shoot. Up first is our 3-shot carbine. These are much shorter than the Lebel. Berthier carbines, both 3 and 5-shot, have sights ranged from 200 to 1,000 meters, with volley positions from 1,200 to 2,000 meters. Again, we're loading this from a 3-shot end block, which will stay in the gun. Next up, the 0715 rifle. A lot of length has been added. Sighting is now like the Lebel, with an adjustable ladder from 400 to 800 meters, and volley positions from 900 to 2400 meters. Flip forward for a 250 meter battle sight. This is still a 3-rounder. Last up is the Model 16 carbine. Now we're up to 5 rounds. Otherwise, handling's the same. Just remember that clip is not going to drop after you've chambered the last round. Try to remember that our focus for this video is just World War I. These guns are going to serve through World War II. There's going to be additional modifications through the 30s. They're going to get rechambered almost 100% across the board to a ball-end cartridge. We'll get there. For World War I, however, though, most of them are going to remain 3-shot. A few are going to come out as 5-shot carbines, and that's about it. They're all going to have the clearing rods, and most are actually going to lack stacking hooks. The thing is, in the collector's market, though, we're getting there after the fact. So when you buy a Berthier or encounter one in a museum, chances are it's going to show signs of post-World War I and especially World War II modification. We actually got lucky. This gun back here was taken into Polish ownership after World War I. And so it was never even rechambered for ball end. We had a little trouble on the range with that, but we managed to get it shot, obviously. They're excellent rifles. They're beautiful. They function well on the battlefield, believe it or not. The 3-shot magazine is a little ridiculous, but given how many other horrible, ridiculous things happened in that war, it's probably not the most ridiculous thing of them all. But let's go ahead and get Mae in here and get her impressions of shooting these things. All right, Mae, you've shot the Lebel and you've shot the Berthiers. Lots of Berthiers. We need to keep this tight for YouTube, so let's go straight into the action. What do you think compared to the Lebel?
Compared to the Lebel, and maybe it's because I've only shot one Lebel, so I might have gotten the bad one in the bunch, but I've shot now 3 Berthiers, and honestly I found the action a whole lot smoother than the Lebel.
That's true. It's a simplified bolt. It really could be a little smoother than the Lebel. I think it's a little smoother than the several Lebels I've handled. But I've also had really nicely polished Lebels that have functioned well too. It may just be that this thing survives age a little bit better. Now, what about the magazine? We're on to end block loading instead of single loading a tube. How do you feel about it?
It was a lot faster comparatively. I'd have to load the Lebel every individual cartridge, whereas this one, pop in 3 or 5 and you're good to go.
Okay, good. Any problems feeding?
Well, yes, you had to finagle it in there a little bit sometimes, but once it was in there, it was pretty reliable.
Okay, good. So none of that yanking the Lebel bolt all the way back to try to get the carrier to tip up. You'd say it was an easier bolt to work?
I would take either one of these to the war any day over the Lebel.
Okay. As for the rifle itself, and I know we're out of order, but I want to compare as close to the Lebel and getting as far away as possible. On the rifle itself, no tube magazine. Does that really make a difference on weight and holding the gun up?
Yes, when we're out there for 6 hours for shooting all day, it makes a significant difference. The weight was almost, it felt like half, I know it wasn't, but after 6 hours of holding the same gun up every day, or all day, it was a huge difference for me.
Okay, so Men on the March, good call.
Yep.
Okay, now to the carbines. Let's go with the 3-shot. Anything remarkable about the 3-shot carbine? It's got the bent handle. Did that feel any easier or no difference at all?
Not really any difference. It's a bent handle. You can still handle it easily.
Now, I know you complained about the lack of a handguard on that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Were you happy to find it on the 5-shot?
Oh, yeah. Significant. It made a huge difference. Are you kidding me? By the end of the day, all the guns were too hot to touch except for the carbine. And we did fire that one at the end of the day.
The 5-shot carbine?
The 5-shot, yes.
Okay. Carbine itself, much lighter. 8mm Lebel is a big round.
Mm-hmm.
How are we doing for recoil?
Recoil actually was pretty significant in terms of, I've handled a lot of milsurps in my day, and even comparing it to the Mosin Nagant carbine, this had more kick to it.
Wow, that's impressive. Okay, so heavy recoil, lightweight.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be happy carrying it around on a horse all day?
Oh yeah, it would be easy to carry on a horse all day. That'd be simple.
Okay. Moving over to 5-shot, were there any big differences between that and the 3-shot action?
Well, yeah, okay, so the way they have it set up on the 5-shot is with a little magazine trapdoor underneath it, it's supposed to just pop open when you load in the next clip, right? Well, maybe it was just this one, I don't know, but I had to finagle it out with my hand. It would just barely even, slide it out.
Yeah, the previous clip didn't stop you from loading the next clip, but when we went to film, putting in the second clip and having the other one pop out, 9 times out of 10 when we were trying to film it, it just wouldn't pop out. It was like this kind of slow, pathetic goldfish poop, and it still was half in there. But the gun loaded, and I imagine the first shot would have cleared it. We just didn't want to send it flying.
Yeah, probably, but after that was really the only issue I had with the rifle, honestly. The handguard was a plus. The extra 2 rounds would make a huge difference on the battle, I can imagine.
Any final thoughts on these guys?
No, I feel like that covered everything. Can't think of anything else to add unless you can.
No, but finally, you were frustrated with Lebel. I don't think you're a Lebel fan. Are you a Berthier fan?
Yes. I mean, comparatively, are you kidding me? Like I said, I'd take any one of these to battle with me compared to the Lebel any day of the week.
Now, you have shot Mausers and things like that. Mm-hmm. Overall, would you want to take one of these to a battle with you?
No.
Okay, I think we could end there then. We'll wrap up with these guys. You're going to see some credits. We keep playing with the episodes. Go down in the comments. Let us know how you like it, what you want to see different. This show is very new, and it's powered by you guys' interest. Mm-hmm. Other than that, thanks, and thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys. Hey everyone, this is May. I'd like to just take a moment to thank some people who have made this show possible. First, there is our crew. These are members of the community who have stepped up and donated their time and expertise. Second, the South Carolina Military Museum, which has provided us with access to their lovely armory. We can't recommend this place enough. We can't forget Shoot Logic, an excellent training group and well worth the drive. They've kindly lent us the facilities once a week for production. Also, the Great War collaboration has allowed us to share some basic costs and given us a wider audience. They're a terrific channel. Finally, we'd like to thank you. This entire project was the result of years of support and enthusiasm. Now for some begging. The site articles, images, anatomies, and more took a lot of work, but not always a lot of money. Sadly, video is brutal, and we're currently paying for it out of our own pockets. If you like the show and would like to see it continue and grow, please consider visiting us at Patreon or stop by the C&Rsenal print shop. Thanks for watching.